Hello everyone and welcome back to another podcast episode of the Sportiverse podcast. And today I'm very honoured to be able to introduce Jason de la Pena. Jason is a former professional cricket player in the UK and currently a sports journalist, having worked for ESPN, Fox Sports Asia, Sky and Sky News. Jason, thanks for being here today.
Honoured. Thank you. Well, thank you for saying that you're honoured. I'm honoured. Good to meet you finally. We've exchanged a few WhatsApp messages and I met your mum, of course, at a swim meet. So yeah, I'm happy to sit with you and happy to talk through whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, so I'll start off by going back a long way, back to childhood days. If I'm not mistaken, if I did my research right, you went to boarding school in the UK.
Yep.
Is that where you first discovered cricket as your passion?
100%. I was talking to a young kid I coached about this the other day, just saying I went to boarding school and you had a choice of, it was the summer. So I arrived in, I think I went at the age of 7. It's many, many years ago because I'm pretty old now, but I went to the age of 7 because my parents were going through a pretty nasty divorce. So they sent me early, and having kids of my own now is, having the thought of sending a 7-year-old to a boarding school. And it was a very military-type boarding school, so the thought of that is kind of eye-poppingly astounding to me. But anyway, it was their decision at the time, and they made the right decision. It was a great time for me. So at that school, every term, you had a choice of 2 sports, and I think it was the summer term that I went, and I had a choice of cricket or, I think, field hockey or tennis, and there's a kid from a year above who kind of mentors you and helps you kind of integrate into the school quicker. And this kid, Giles, just said, do you want to do cricket or tennis? I was like, I don't know. I've never done either, so let's do cricket. And from the first time that I held a cricket bat to the first time that I bowled a ball, it was a love affair. The love affair has gone through a few kind of incarnations, I guess, over many years, but it's a very strong connection that I have with the game of cricket, and I love it for many reasons. It's the team sport, but it's made up of individual performances, and it's still, and now it's come full circle. We'll get to it in a minute, but I'm coaching again, so yeah. But it started at the age of 7, and it was love at first sight, as it were.
And obviously that was in the UK, and since I'm now kind of studying in the UK as well, I kind of got to understand what sports is like in the UK a bit more. And what was interesting to me was how the talent scheme in cricket is set up in the UK. So when you were playing at that time, when you were there, were you playing against other boarding schools, or was it clubs or?
Yeah, against other boarding schools. I mean, we had during the summer term, we would have a fixture list of around 12 to 15 games against other schools who'd either visit us or we'd travel away. We'd get a coach and drive, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, sometimes an hour to another school. At that age, because I was very young, there was no pathway, as it were, to, towards professional cricket. That didn't really kick in until I got to my bigger boarding school at the age of 13. But yeah, I mean, it was, as you know, being in the UK yourself now, cricket is a really massive part of the summer. And obviously with the likes of Sky Sports and BT and those broadcasters, giving cricket to viewers, that whole piece has changed a lot. But, there's a lot of cricket to watch on TV, and there's a lot of cricket to play during the weekends and midweek, Wednesday 20-over games, because it doesn't get dark until 9 or 10 o'clock at night in the English summer. So you can play until 9 at night, which is great fun.
And if I understood it correctly, when you get older, around the age of like 13, 14, like you just mentioned, and you are in kind of bigger boarding schools or private schools, your chances of making it as a professional cricket player are a lot higher, because kind of the talent scheme is set up around boarding schools and private schools. Was that the case at that time as well?
Yeah, it was. I mean, because I think I went on a first-class tour with Gloucestershire at the age of 16. We went to Namibia in West Africa. Yeah, got my geography right. In West Africa, we went to Namibia for their independence, and they took a couple of young players like myself. So I went to a place called Stowe School, which is a big boarding school um, in Buckinghamshire, and our cricket master was an ex-cricket professional, and he saw, the talent in me very quickly, and he recommended me to a few counties. So I was on the kind of in the eye line of a few professional teams from the age of 13, 14. So you're right, the chance to play professional or, go down that route is more possible. Not because you're a boarding school, but at that time, probably yes, because it was more board or privately educated kids who had the opportunity to play a lot of cricket. Whereas at the time, at these state-run schools, the government were taking a lot of land back to develop, as they're doing here in Singapore, to develop residential or other facilities. So, yeah, at that time, and still I think in the England setup now, the majority of the players are privately educated. There's just more grounds, more space, better facilities, and probably a better pathway program if you want to choose, professional sport as a potential career.
Now, since you said you were kind of playing with professional teams from age 14, 15 onwards, that meant you were kind of exposed to a lot of professional players. Did you look at any of them and be like, I need to have what he has in terms of kind of like personality traits or cricket specific traits? How helpful was it to be in that environment of professional players?
Oh, amazing. And you will have heard, the weird thing is one day you're watching this cricketer on TV and then the next day you're training with them and then 2 weeks later you're playing in a game with them. I mean, it's such a weird thing, I mean, Courtney Walsh was the long-term cricket professional at Gloucestershire, which was my home county and which is where I made my first class or professional debut. And Courtney Walsh was a guy who I watched on TV and I was like, oh, this guy's amazing. And then again, I was training with him and he was talking to me and then I was opening the bowling with him against Australia, It's just this weird thing. And it's not fame, but it's the professional game comes at you quick if if you're lucky enough to get into it. I think from my side, as far as looking at players and thinking I need to get what he has, or I think, looking back on my career, the weak, if I can be honest, the weakest part of my career was my mental game. And as we know, at the professional level, at any level really, if you don't back yourself and don't believe in yourself, then you haven't really got a snowball's chance in hell. I mean, I had glimpses of brilliance and I had good first team games or professional games, and I had some bad games. I think looking back now, when you talk about you need to get what he has or she has, or, it's more, for me, it's more about just put in the hard yards. Self-belief or belief in your own game or, just backing yourself comes from knowing that you've done the work and knowing that you've worked harder than your peer or your teammate. Like I said, cricket is a team game, but it's made up of individual performances. So if I'm being honest with you, at that age, I cruised into I had a lot of talent, and suddenly you get to a stage where it's like, oh, so I was really good at my school. Now all these other kids who are with me are as good, if not better, and they probably worked harder than me as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's all about, when you talk about getting what that player has, it's just work bloody hard. Yeah. And make sacrifices. I had a girlfriend, a long-term girlfriend, and stuff like that, and that it wasn't her fault. That took my gaze away from the professional game, and she wanted my time, and I was happy to give her my time. I should have been more, tight with my time, and you just work your ass off. just work and work and work and work. And I remember there was a ex-captain of Somerset, guy called Peter Roebuck, who was a very famous journalist, sadly no longer with us. But he said to me, even the likes of Brian Lara, all these greats of the game, they work their asses off. You just don't see it. It's behind the scenes what they do. You think they've got a God-given ability, but actually they just work incredibly hard. Are we allowed to swear on this or not?
Yeah, go ahead.
They just work fucking hard, right? Yeah. If I look back at my career, my cricket career, I didn't do that. When I got into TV, I worked my tail off. And now with the coaching business, I'm working my tail off.
And how important is it then to have the right environment and people around you to kind of keep you, what's the word? Keep you...
Well, keep you grounded, but also keep you working your ass off. Yeah. I wish I'd met my wife, my long-suffering 18 years I've been married to the lady, but she would have put a rocket up my ass had she met me at the beginning of my cricket career. And only because she has, you talk about surround yourself, and a lot of athletes say, surround yourself with good people who really give a shit about you. She cares for me, and she would have, it's kind of tough love, but she would have put a rocket up my ass and said, no, you have to go training, you have to work harder, you have to do this better, work on your mental game more. Absolutely, it's about, and if you can get a mentor as well, if you can find a mentor who can guide you through the game, someone who you can ring up and say, listen, I'm struggling a bit, I'm a bit low on confidence, and that mentor will take you back to when you were playing well, might remind you of something that you'd forgotten about your own game. I had a mentor in Graham Dilley, who was the coach at Surrey, ex-England fast bowler, a great of the game, played a big part in the 1981 Ashes that Botham and Willis helped win, but Mike Burley was the captain. Graham Dilley was one of the players there as well. He sadly died. In fact, he was head of cricket up at Loughborough. He died. He was renting a house in Loughborough, renting an apartment. Sadly. He was a great guy, but he was a mentor of mine when I was at Surrey County Cricket Club. He was the bowling coach there. He was just a great guy who believed in me, and believed in me when I lacked a bit of self-belief, and really saw in me the potential to go far further in the game, or far further in the game than I did. So I think, your family. I never had a strong family unit. I do now. Touch wood. We've got 3 kids, and we've built this unit. But my parents were divorced. My father was not particularly interested in me, and my mum was busy and trying to, earn money so we could survive, right? And then she fell in love pretty quickly after they divorced. So I didn't have a strong family unit. I think that's important. But if you don't, then you just surround yourself, with good people. But it's also being able to know who is good for you. I was quite immature as a human because I'd had this, boarding school education from the age of 7 to 18. So I'd been kind of tucked away at a very insular existence of boarding school. And then the insular existence of professional sport, where you turn up, you play, you get a car, you get a house, you're driven, you drive yourself. Everything's done for you. So you don't know anything about life. So, but absolutely, if you've got a good mentor, a coach who really gives a shit about you, and solid people around you, then you can do anything in life. Yeah.
You just touched on athletes having everything done for themselves, and I spoke to someone actually a couple of days ago, and I spoke to him about athletes nowadays, especially in football, for them even more is done than in the past. And I actually asked him if he thinks that due to the fact that even more is done for them, they get a lot less independent, and we'll see a lot less good coaches in football in the future, because nowadays everything is done for them. They don't have to think for themselves.
Yeah, a little bit. You look at someone like Sir Alex Ferguson, from Man United, and he, as I understood it, he was a father figure to the likes of Beckham, Scholes, Nicky Butt, all those guys, and he wasn't just a coach or a manager. He would say, right, you invest your money here, I know you've got an agent, but I've got your best interests at heart. You invest your money here. You do this course in carpentry or becoming an electrician. What have something to fall back on, you know. So I think that father figure coach who's really invested in you in not just a football way or a cricket way, someone who's going to help you with life and learning about life. I think they're few and far between. I hope that kind of coach or mentor or manager, it's man management, isn't it? Really, I hope that doesn't die out. But as I understand it, guys like Jurgen Klopp, they're still like that. I wonder if Xavi Alonso at Bayer Leverkusen is the same. He's obviously, Leverkusen have just won the Bundesliga title, and Bayern Munich are out of the running. So which is the first time in 11, 12 years. So back to your question, managers, coaches who are like that. I hope it doesn't die out, but you're right. Particularly football, there's so much money, and they have an agent as well who's just telling them to be here, do that, do this, do this. The problem is when athletes come out of the game, and it might be tomorrow, they might get a terrible knee injury, God forbid, but they're not ready for it. I wasn't ready for it. When I came out of cricket at the age of 29, 28. I was retired. I finished at Worcestershire, and I wasn't ready for life. I really wasn't. It sent me into some kind of breakdown because I'd had this instant existence at boarding school and then cricket, and life comes at you pretty hard. So that coach or that man manager, and again, surrounding yourself with good people is really important.
So I think now it's a good time to move on and talk a bit about coaching. And I know you've got your own cricket school academy in Singapore. But would you just want to briefly explain what exactly that is and what you do?
Yeah, so it's interesting because what we've talked about is exactly what I've put into our coaching business. It's called 3 Cricket, and 3 the number. I'm a level 3 coach, so it means I can coach an international cricket team. I'm a highly qualified coach. I've got 3 kids. And we have 3 pillars of 3 Cricket, which is excite, educate, empower. And in that says a lot, really. All the stuff that I needed when I was a player, I'm trying to provide for my athletes now. So we've got about 80 kids in the program. We did build a physical academy, AstroTurf, floodlights, nets, down at Turf City, but Turf City's gone. The government have taken it back. So we're now running cricket programs at 5 international schools in Singapore. And then off the back of that, we get a good rate for their facilities. So we use their facilities instead of building another expensive cricket academy. So, we provide, all my coaches are highly qualified. We've got 3 level 3 coaches. We've got a couple of guys who played international cricket as well. And we provide that mentorship and that man management and that, true meaning of the word coaching. For me, that real investment by a coach, not only in your sons or your daughter's cricket, but what's happening outside, what's happening at school that might be impacting on their cricket, what's happening in the home life that might be impacting. Are they sometimes a kid will turn up and be super happy, then a week later he'll be down in the dumps, and you have to find out what's going on with these kids, and provide a platform for them to express themselves. They love the game, but as a coach, it's something that I took from Patrick Muratoglu, who was Serena Williams' coach, is Simona Halep, and some greats of the game. And he's got an incredible tennis academy in the south of France. And he said, we as coaches are there to provide a platform for athletes to express themselves. That's it. And I absolutely agree with that. So the academy is going strong. I would say we got about 300 kids in all, with the schools as well. And then some of those kids who want to potentially take their game to the next step. And we have a pathway system as well. So we have, in the UK, Loughborough is a centre of cricketing excellence, as are Oxford University, Cambridge, Durham, Bradford and Leeds, and Cardiff, as well as Loughborough. And Loughborough's got it's just an incredible facility for cricket. So we have pathways to those universities for our cricketers as well, and academies in Australia, the US, and the UK. And that's me tying up my contacts from the professional game. Simon Willis, Jamie Hewitt, who's a high performance coach for Middlesex. Aftab Habib, who batted for England in, I think, 4 Test matches. Afi and I are great mates, and we've already placed a couple of kids with academies in the UK. So it's building, and there's a lot of talent in Singapore, but like with a lot of athletes in Singapore, you need to go out. Yeah, because the concentration on sport here is not as it is in the UK or the US or South Africa or Australia. So yeah, it's going well. Hopefully, touch wood. It's hard work running your own business.
I've seen on your website, I stumbled across the quote, "A good coach can change a game, a great coach can change a life." And I guess that pretty much sums up.
Absolutely. Exactly what we spoke about with my academy, or with, great coaches in any sport. You really can. I did before I decided to move back into coaching in 2020, I went to Republic Poly here, and I did a values and principles course in sports coaching. And the guy came on, he burst onto the stage and he said, as a coach, you can make a massive difference to a child or an athlete. Never, ever think that being a coach is down the rungs of the ladder as far as a career, because it is a massive part of anyone's life. You get a good coach, it's like having a diamond in your pocket. So that really struck me, because I was a bit like, oh my God, I'm going back into coaching. I'm not sure if I'm ready for this. And he really captured my imagination, actually. And absolutely, you're studying it, so it's a wonderful gift, actually. And as a coach, you got to be in the right headspace. You got to be able to give. For me, it's a very giving career, but you really can, as you can also damage an athlete as well if you're not invested in them, like I say, from an athletic standpoint, but also the mental game, the personal side as well. You need to find out what makes that person tick. So yeah, I'm loving it, and I'm grateful for it. And cricket has, in a way, it's come full circle now. From player to, and then I went into TV, and now I'm coaching again, and cricket was all pointing towards, go back. And my wife summed it up, because she said, what you've done as a professional cricketer for 12 years, that experience you've had from great coaches of the game, playing with great players, that can't be replicated, actually. So you're very lucky. So bloody well use it, give back, and try and build something as far as an academy where the coaches give a shit. That's what it's about.
Now, when coaching children and planning sessions for children, it's a lot different to coaching older age groups, obviously, in terms of session planning as well. Is fun the most important thing when planning a session for kids, or is it really just about trying to get across what I want to get across, and then if I can add a fun bit at the end, then that's good? Or do you base the session around? For
me, you've got to engage with. So, for example, we at Singapore American School, which has had no cricket, we've got 80 kids in the program there, and we take a TOTS. I'm just using this as an example. We take a TOTS session every Wednesday, and 6 kids, all Chinese, by the way, or of Chinese origin. So that's really interesting in itself, because it's not, you don't associate cricket with the Chinese diaspora in Singapore, right? So, but they love it. So there's a little bit of discipline as well, because these kids can run rings around you. They're only 4, but they're hilarious. But they're lovely kids. There's a little bit of discipline. You've got it. Sometimes it's like herding cats, right? But you've got to get them. Excite is one of my pillars, and you have to get them excited. It's like, right, kids, we're going to do this today, and this is how we're going to do it. And then you show them, and they go, wow. And then, they have so you've got to get them engaged. And then, fun. I want kids, whatever age it is, when they come to our academy, to associate cricket with fun. I don't want them to think that it's this old stuffy game from England where, everybody wears whites and it goes on for days and days and days. And, I want there to be absolutely a fun element, because if the kids are not enjoying it, they're not gonna continue doing it. So success for me as an academy, or our academy, is if you come and get coached by us. Whether you stay with our academy or not, we'd love you to stay, but we want you to carry on playing cricket when you go back to the UK or whatever. You go to the US, or you search out a cricket club. So absolutely, fun is at the heart of what we do. The kids who are more serious in our advanced groups, there's fun, but it's bloody hard work, and it's an intense session as well. So it changes from age group to age group, or skill group to skill group. I don't generally do it by age, because I like, if you're a 7-year-old kid and you're good enough, I'll bump you up a couple of groups. For me, you've got to be challenged. Otherwise, you'll just walk away. You'll be bored. But fun is absolutely at the heart of what we do.
And I think that what you just mentioned is a lot easier in cricket than other sports. If I take football, for example, if you've got someone that's maybe technical-wise good enough to play, I don't know, with under 13s, even though they're 10 years old, but body-wise, they're physically they're a lot weaker than 13-year-olds. You can't just bump him up because he just, yeah. I mean, listen, cricket is a hardball game. It is a contact sport, so you have to be cognizant of that. But I've got a kid who's 11 now. He's going to be playing in an under 15 game. And in fact, he was as a 10-year-old, because he can handle it. And if he gets hit, he's a tough kid. And obviously with the parents' consent, that's important as well. But the safety element is a massive part of what we do as well. But for me, the kids have to be challenged. Otherwise, they'll just walk away. And it's a real sweet spot, knowing when to bump them up or just take them down a group, because they might be out of their depth a little bit. I think that's the skill of the coach as well. Because as a coach, you're not just a coach. You're a man manager, you're a psychologist, you're a mentor, you're a friend. You are, you're many, many, many things, not just, someone who teaches someone how to play a sport. Out of own interest, how much planning goes into, or how much you plan your behavior before a session? Because when I coached in Loughborough, I'm a person that I want everything to be as planned as possible. I don't know. If something's planned, it's a lot easier for me to implement that than kind of out of the blue doing something. And I would always plan, okay, in this exercise, I will stand there. I will say these kind of things. I will try and have this behavior. Do you do the same, or is it?
Absolutely, and we've now got 6 coaches in the team, 7 coaches actually in the 3 cricket team. And I always say to the coaches, listen, there's going to be days where you don't want to coach, but you have to steel yourself away, take a deep breath, and say, right, come on, it's a 1-hour session, or sometimes we do 2-hour sessions as well, or a 90-minute session. It's a pretty good way to earn a living, I think. Well, you want to be sat behind a desk in an office crunching numbers, For me, you're out in the sun. Sure, it's hot in Singapore, but, you're staying fit. You're clocking off your 10,000 steps every day, and, and there's big gaps in the day. So it's not, if I look at the schedule, I mean, I did a session this morning at Dulwich College for an hour with 15 girls in the session, by the way, which is amazing. So girls cricket's on the up, as we know. But so for me, planning is absolutely important. I am skilled enough now, I think, to have a plan in my head. Before, I used to have a cue card, and I'd had 4 or 5 things. And I say to my coaches, please get there 30 minutes early, set up your cones. And for me, a perfect session is, and I'm probably like you, a perfectionist, slightly OCD as well, but I'll have my cones. I'll have this segment of the session. I'll welcome the kids in. I'll say, right, we're over here. And then I'll have a bunch of cones, everything laid out over there. I'll have 3 or 4 things set up so the kids can segue from one to the other or get a quick drink and then, right, we're over there in a second. So, and then that will all segue into a game of the technical stuff that we practice. Yeah, there has to be a flow to it. Sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes there's left field things which come in, or it chucks it down with rain and you suddenly got to pick everything up and go inside. But preparation prevents poor performance, or preparation prevents piss poor performance. That's not always the way, but there are, and that's a cliche, I know, but if you are prepped and you're ready for it, you'll find that the session will go much better. And I hate turning up and setting up while the kids are waiting. You've got to be set up beforehand. Even if you rush, you get there 15 minutes early, you go and get your kit. I always carry a backpack with cones, and this goes back to my news, when I was a journalist, you had to go on set prepared for notes, and, you don't know whether, what's going to happen in the Middle East. So you got to be prepped and ready for any eventuality. And I carry a rucksack. I've got a tennis racket. I've got 3 different types of tennis balls. I've got a reaction ball, that ball that bounces all over the place. I've got an orange cricket ball, a white cricket ball, a red cricket ball. I've got a cricket ball with a white side and a red side, so you can see if the seam's going down straight. So I've got probably 8 different types of projectile in my bag. I've got a tennis racket. I've got a small cricket bat which helps to hit catches. I've got a baseball mitt to take the catch. I've got a little medical kit. So no, absolutely. And so that for me also helps me relax, because I know that I've got some kit if the cupboard where all the equipment is locked, or the school changes the padlock code or something, which happens a lot. So you're just ready, and you can run a session if the shit hits the fan and you can't get, so 100% you got to be prepped and ready. Kids will always throw curveballs in, but that's the beauty of coaching. And I say to my coaches as well, and as you've said, it's easy to coach elite athletes in a way, or it's easier to coach older kids. You as a coach have to be able to go from age 4 to a group with 5 to 7-year-olds, to a group with 7 to 10-year-olds, all the age ranges up to adults. That makes you a coach. For me, I'm not judging, but it's yeah. So it's because some of my coaches, you can tell they'd rather coach kids your age rather than much younger kids, because it's harder work. It is harder work. I find it a lot of fun, but it's harder work.
Yeah, I think that's something I was most surprised about actually when I got to uni, because I was always very focused on having a coaching career in professional sports. But then when I got to uni, I realized coaching professional athletes is actually a lot easier than coaching children or young people, because they follow what you say, they know what to do,
and they can replicate, they can copy, because they have the talent and the skill set to do so. Whereas the younger kids, it's like herding cats.
A lot less active coaching, I'd say, in professional.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I say this respectfully, but it's because it's more the mental side, because the athlete is talented. It's more the mental side of the game, really, and that's what I experienced. Mentally, I was a mess. Physically, I was fit. I was strong. I'm 6'5". I had a good bowling action, and I could swing the ball away at pace. And I could bat. So, but at that elite level, it's more the mental side of the game, I think. So that's where the coach as a psychologist comes in.
In football, we've got. When planning a session or trying to adapt a session, we've got something called the STEP framework. And STEP basically stands for space, task, equipment, players. It's kind of a guideline for coaches to
copy this down, yeah.
To be able to help them to adapt a session a lot quicker and a lot easier. So if thinking about how can I change the space, or how can I change the task for a specific player or for the whole group, how can I change the equipment or players' numbers to make it harder or easier, or change kind of an exercise goal. Is there something similar in cricket, or is it because it's quite individual in a way as well that there's not?
Yeah, I mean, for example, we ran a beginner session last night, from 6 to 8 p.m. and coaches Jim and Kuti were set up, and I give a theme to all my coaches every Sunday. I send out a message. This is the schedule for the week ahead. Some notes about, school holidays are coming up. For example, my academy, we close in July. So I was just reminding, this school closes on this date. If you want to take holiday, July's your time, because come August, we come back and it's crazy. So I send out a schedule, and then I send out a theme for the week, and we're working on the front foot drive. But I said, let's start. We haven't played, I like to start the session just to get the kids engaged, get them sweating a bit and get them fired up for the session. I like to start with a game that involves everybody. So hand hockey or four-way cricket, or there's a bunch of stuff, even non-stop cricket. Simple, but effective, and it works. So we had a big game of hand hockey in a big AstroTurf area. So the kids were, breathing heavily and sweaty after about 20 minutes. And so that they did that, and then they had all the cones set up for, I love a cone. They had all the cones set up for the front foot drive, working in pairs. The coaches showing the example. This is what we want you to do, and then everyone, the coaches walking around, keeping an eye on the kids, and then that segued into the kind of technical training aspect, getting in the nets and working on the front foot drive. Is there a system like step in cricket? That's the first I've heard of it, but I love it. So I'm going to use it. No, there isn't. Well, I guess there is. I guess it's the same, right? But as far as an official way of, what do you mean? As far as setting up the session, or is that
more just kind of because from the way that I understood, the step framework was kind of set for football. So I thought,
yeah, in cricket, no. I mean, I'm pretty up on what the England and Wales Cricket Board are doing as far as coaching. But I wouldn't say there's like an official thing like step. Again, it's up to me as the business owner, I guess, to set the theme. I have programs. I devised by week, and then recaps of weeks 5 and 6. Almost a kind of 15-16 week module for beginners, intermediates, advanced. And that includes bowling, batting, fielding, etiquette, psychology. As you go further up, strength and conditioning, and the kind of finer parts of the game. We have a holistic team as well, strength and conditioning. We have a Dr. J. Lee, who's an NCAA golfer. She's turned psychologist. And Bevan Colles, who's our physio and kind of S&C expert. So that all kicks in as you go further up the program with us. But no, we don't have a step system, as it were, but I'm pretty rigorous when it comes to this is what we're doing for the week, and whether it's beginner, intermediate, advanced, or elite, this is what we're going to work on. And the coaches are pretty good at following that. Because for me, there has to be a method to the madness. And also, I looked at it as a parent to 3 kids myself. My kids get coached swimming and rugby and football and hockey. But what are they actually learning? Are the coaches, you will have seen coaches who just stand there and say nothing, do nothing, and it's just a babysitting service. If I ask my child, what did you learn? I'm not being a dick. I'm just, what did you learn? Yeah. What did you learn today? Oh, Daddy, we learned this. I'm like, great. I'm happy with that. And I won't say to coaches, why aren't you teaching my kid this? It's, for me as a service, we're in the service industry, so there has to be a flow and a method to the madness. And then at the end of that 100 weeks worth of coaching, have they learned the rudiments of the game, and can they move on to the next level? That's what I do, that's how I've devised it. Because people are paying good money as well, right? Not good money, we're reasonably priced, but as a parent, you're paying money to get coached. So you want the kid to actually get coached, the basics of the game, so that they can kick on through the levels. And then, once they get to university, they can play at university and think, you know what, actually, I'm a pretty decent cricketer,
Well, I like that you have a psychologist in your kind of program.
Got a holistic team. Bevan Colles, Dr. J. Lee Nair, who's herself, she had an NCAA scholarship to the US to play golf. I mean, if there's one sport that does mess with your head, it's golf. And then we got our kind of strength and conditioning team as well. So, and then we got Dr. Naras Lapsis as well, who's a nutritionist. So yeah, we got a good team together.
So as you mentioned before, cricket is a team sport, but certain elements of cricket are quite individualistic. So when I did my first coaching badge, one of the first things we learned, it was for football, but one of the first things we learned is never let a kid wait in line in a training session. So let's say if you're setting up a shooting session, never have one kid shoot and then the next kid shoot and then kind of stand in line and you have like 10 kids waiting in line.
Yeah.
How do you manage that in cricket, since it's quite individualistic, but it's a team sport?
I mean, that's tough as well because it depends how many kids in the group and it depends how many coaches. You know, as a business owner, I would love to have 5 coaches. I'd love to have 1 coach to 2 kids, but you just can't do that. For me, I would max it out probably at about 8 kids per coach. Last night at our session, we had about 17 kids and I had 2 coaches. So it was about 8.5 kids a coach. Worst case scenario, 10 kids a coach. And there are, that's why we try and get them to work in pairs, actually. You are right. I don't want kids queuing up and, here, catch this, run towards me, catch this, run to the back of the queue. There are sometimes times like that, like relays. Younger kids love relays. So you've got 2 teams, right? 1 kid at the top and then the group down the end of the cricket net. Run in, pick up the ball, catch it, underarm it to that kid. He runs back, I think that's pretty tough. And unless you've got a stupid amount of money and you can throw coaches to make the groups smaller. But I guess that's the beauty of the coach and creating sessions where that does not happen. I do agree with you. And the younger the kid that you work with, or the younger the kids, the less attention span they're going to have. So you really need to be cognizant of that. And you've got to have eyes in the back of your head. I've been a parent for, we've got 3 kids. So I guess I'm used to having that kind of peripheral vision and eyes in the back of my head aspect, which I have to tell my coaches about because these kids will run rings around you. But you're right, having them in queues lined up and waiting is not ideal. But sometimes, also, every session you have to vary it. Otherwise, kids will call you out and go, "We did this last week." Yeah. It's like, oh my God. And there's nothing worse than that as a coach. For me, that's actually that's a big thumbs down for me as a coach. Because kids have got no filters. They'll go, we did it, we've done this so many times, and I guess that's the beauty of when you prepare a session. It's like, right, what did we do last week, and what are we going to do this week that's completely different? And then you can rinse and repeat in kind of 6-week circles or something like that. You're not reinventing the wheel, but you do have to keep the sessions interesting, and like you say, don't have kids queuing up. Get them to work in pairs if they can. That's what we try and do.
Right, for the final part, I wanted to speak to you about sports broadcasting. But first, I wanted to talk to you about your kind of transition period from being an athlete to moving into sports broadcasting. You touched on it beforehand, but how difficult was it to that transition period?
It was a very dark period.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean it, and I'm happy to talk about it. I was definitely in some kind of nervous breakdown because, God, thank God for my wife. I mean, I was never gonna look at the worst case scenario, i.e. But let's get this straight. I love cricket. At the time, it was all I knew, actually. And it was all my life had been focused on, was to play professional cricket. So when I didn't really decide to retire myself, but I was done because I would play the summer in England, go to South Africa in the winters, and as a fast bowler, I was just, my body was broken, and I was, I never had a rest. So I was ready to finish, but when I did finish, it hit me like a ton of bricks because I didn't know anything else. And I was 28 and I was like, shit, I got the rest of my life in front of me. What do? I didn't have a degree. I I made my first class debut as a 17-year-old a few days before my French A level. And I was offered places at Durham and other universities, but I just wanted to get straight into first class cricket because I think I'd been chosen for England under 19s as well. So everything was happening quickly. I was like, yeah, this is great. Let's go. Fuck education. Let's. And that was stupid and naive. But I didn't have the people around me to say, no, you're going to go to university. You can still, and at the time I could still play. I could have a summer contract with a county, so I could go to Durham or whatever university, maybe Loughborough. And I could come back to the county in June and have June, July, August, September with the county. So still, I still would have had a professional career. It was a very dark period, mate. Like I say, I was 28. I didn't know what to do. I got a job completely through nepotism at a media buying agency in Soho in London. So a great opportunity, but I was earning £900 a month. And that's not really enough to keep the wolves from the door. I was kipping on floors of friends who lived in London. And it was tough. And my cricket career was over. My teammates had gone. Cricket is, you live out of each other's pockets really for months on end. The banter's great. The team ethos I love. And it was gone. And I was in a pretty dark place. And a couple of years, I think I got made redundant from my first media agency. That was after 9/11. So one of our clients was British Airways, and obviously all the airlines stopped flying and stopped spending on advertising budgets. So they had to offload a few media buyers, and then I got picked up by another agency. And then I met my wife. Well, yeah, my wife to be, and she sort of helped sort me out. Really, I was in a bad place, and again it was a depression. But she said, right, this is what we're going to do. You need to be on TV. I was like, well, yeah, it's a great idea, but how the hell do I do it? She said, right, you come and live with me. I bought an apartment with my brother, and we rented that out. And my brother gave me a bit of a step up to buy an apartment in London, in southwest London. It was just a one-bed flat, which we still have and is rented out. And so we rented that out, and then I went to live with my girlfriend at the time. And I did a journalism degree through the NCTJ with the National Council for the Training of Journalists. I did a diploma in broadcast media law, and a few other modules as well. And within a very short space of time, I did a screen test for the now famous mouthpiece of Vladimir Putin, Russia Today. But at the time, it was an international news channel just setting up, and it was, we were going to Moscow, and it was a chance for someone like me who'd had a cricket career and now could get a chance as a journalist, as a presenter. I got a sports presenting gig, but very quickly I was editing, I was reporting. The money that was available for this channel was huge, so they were sending reporters around the world, and we had satellite trucks, and it was great. So if you put your hand up and you got stuck in, you rolled your sleeves up, and for me this was a second chance. You could do anything, and very quickly I was moved into becoming a news anchor. The money was good. I'd gone from bumming around London as a landscape gardener and then as a media buyer, and earning £900 a month to earning tens of thousands of US dollars. Not a month, unfortunately, but the money was good, and that helped give confidence back to me. I had a career path now. I worked my socks off in Moscow. I only worked there for 18 months because I tried to work my way back to my wife, my fiancée at the time, back in London. And I got an anchor's role at France 24 in Paris, because my French is very good, and there were a bunch of news channels being set up at the time. And Nicolas Sarkozy, who was the president, set up this France 24. It's still going, actually. And that was, the learning curve for me was vertical as well. So I was learning about journalism. I was learning how to write. I was learning, how to present, how to dress on set, and made great friends in Moscow and Paris, and then got to Sky News in London within a couple of years. Yeah, I've probably gone on and on and on explaining this. So Sky News and then Sky Sports, and then we came to Singapore in 2010.
So it was more your wife pushing you into sports broadcasting.
Well, she worked in media, so she probably saw the path for me a bit clearer than I did, because I was in a funk, in a real dark cloud, and again a very deep depression. Having, when you lose a career that you love, it's like a death. It's like a death, and and then going into media buying, and I lost my job a couple of times, and so I was in a pretty deep place. But she saw it very clearly. It's like, you got to be on TV. You sound good, you look good, blah blah blah, all that rubbish. But but you've got to get a journalism. I got a diploma, which was hard work. It was a lot of long distance learning, and and as someone who'd bummed around on a cricket field for most of my life, it was knuckling down to studies again. I kind of did things a different way around. I didn't get my degree before cricket or during cricket. I got it after, right? So as a mature student, as it were. But I loved it, and it brought us here to Singapore, and I would do anything to do it again, actually. Although I love coaching, I'm still, I'd still be keen to do some broadcasting and presenting, and so yeah, that's it. It was a great part of my life.
We talked, when talking about coaching, we talked a lot about preparation. So I'm interested, how does preparation look like before a live broadcast? If we can take a Bundesliga match day, for example, because I used to remember when I was a bit younger, like 6 or 7 years ago, on Fox Sports Asia, yeah. Bundesliga match days, yeah, you were part of it.
So, well, preparation for me is not just about what time do you go into the office. It's, you get up, you go for a run. You've got to look good to be on TV. You've got to sound good. So I had to look after my voice. I had to drink, I'd drink like pineapple juice, which would coat my throat with a kind of syrupy, so the timbre of your voice is strong when you're on air. And yeah, fitness. I mean, you had to be physical. I would go to the gym every single day. I used to do high intensity training, because you need to look lean, right? When you're on TV, you need to look good. It sounds really vain, but it's not. I was working for ESPN and Fox, so 2 American networks, and the bosses would call you out if you're like, dude, you're overweight. You need to lose some weight. I mean, you're in the entertainment business, right? So you have to look good. And then preparation, as far as, I would always do some prep at home and make some notes. But generally the call time was 3 hours before on air. So that would include having a meeting with the producers about, this is the show that we want, and the producer would prepare a running order, and they'd say, we'd sit down for 5-10 minutes over a coffee and say, what do you reckon? I say, yeah, it's good. What about this? Let's talk about this subject matter. What about, I don't know, Thomas Tuchel having a shocker at Borussia Dortmund, and then there would be a news segment that would be fitted into the broadcast as well. So what are we going to, we're going to make sure we're not going to repeat ourselves in the live broadcast, and then the news, the news piece comes in as well, because that looks really bad if you're basically repeating yourself in the news thing that you've just spoken about it 30 seconds before in the live broadcast. So that would include preparation, meeting with the producers, makeup, which for a guy is easy. We've all got, I got short hair, so just a bit of hair putty and some makeup, and I have to be clean shaven, and then get your suit on, suit and tie, and for me, I was a voracious note maker. I would, just because I didn't want to get caught out on air. So I would have notes on every player, on the results, on, obviously which would kind of tail in nicely to what we were discussing and what my producer what he wanted to get across in the pre-show. And then just watch the game and then talk to the producer whilst we're watching the game about what we're going to talk about in the halftime show and the post show. Yeah. But preparation is much more than just making notes and making sure you're not going to make a dick of yourself on air. It's about looking good. It's about sounding good. It's about what am I going to eat, because it's potentially 4 hours on air. I don't want to get hungry, but also I don't want to feel bloated on air, because that's terrible. And again, you're in the entertainment industry, so there is a vanity aspect to the whole thing as well.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. It makes sense now, but so they were that strict on weight.
A little bit, yeah. When ESPN became Fox, we had a boss from South Korea who was quite. He was like, I want you guys to look good. He was very kind of Americanized in his thinking. And I've done some work with some networks in the US. I used to fly up to LA and do some gigs with Tennis Channel, and it's very much, white teeth, perfection. Perfection on air. No, really. And, we kind of, laugh at it. But, yeah, it's yeah, and you are leading. You're presenting a channel to the world essentially. So, you got to look good. I think it's important.
How difficult was it in the beginning to speak into a camera? Because when I sometimes, obviously now with the podcast and everything, and when I try to record YouTube videos just by myself, speak into a camera, I find it extremely difficult. Speaking to a camera, like speaking to a real person.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, you got to imagine the black hole is like you're talking to your brother. I used to imagine it was my brother. And like you and I we're just having a chat, right, in a bar. And that's how it should be. And that was what was described to me as well. Just imagine if you could put someone's face on the camera, you would be like, just again, like you and I chatting here. So it's tough. It's tough to ad-lib or to, just to keep filling, because you're wearing an earpiece, so your producer is sometimes saying, shit, we got 3 minutes to fill, just keep talking, whether it be questions or, hey everybody, welcome to the show, coming up in the next few minutes we're going to have this and that, and don't forget we got Bundesliga coming up, and and doing I done learn some promos as well of what shows are coming up or what product you're going to be bringing on air. We've got the T20 World Cup from the US and the West Indies coming up as well. We've got some great talent on show, blah, blah. So over time, you learn, you kind of keep it tucked away in your brain somewhere, and you can just call on these. It's like a Rolodex of shit that you can just spout on air, right? But it is tough because it's a weird thing of talking to a black hole. But I remember when I was on air with Sky News, I had a deal with Sky News where I was a sports presenter and a world news presenter. And the overnight editor felt that our overnight news anchor wasn't strong enough to deal with the story that they were going to break. So I was on sport, and he said, can you do the overnight shift? And I said, well, I've been here since 6 p.m. and you're asking me to finish at 6 a.m. I said, sure, I'll do it. And he said, because we're going to break the Michael Jackson death. And that was on TMZ, which was an entertainment website. And at the time, wasn't a trusted source, but Sky News had called up people in the US and like, yeah, he's died. So they were going to go with it. And I had to break that. And the camera there was no auto cue. It was just a black lens. Good evening, everybody. The king of pop has died. It was that kind of, and then guests coming online from the US or coming into the studio to talk about arguably one of the greatest, albeit controversial characters, but with the one of the most famous people in the world. It's like Princess Diana dying, or the attacks on the World Trade Center in 9/11. At 9/11, on 9/11, should I say? So yeah, the camera is black and you're just talking, but you have computer screens under the desk, and you have little screens with, Al Jazeera, BBC, CBS, ABC News, so you can see what all the other broadcasters are doing. You've also got wires coming in from Reuters and Associated Press, so you've got a printer, You got to on the top right of your screen, you can click on that wire, more news about Michael Jackson. So click, print, and then you've got notes in front of you as well. So there's lots of sources of information coming in. And sometimes you just have to look at the camera and say, ladies and gentlemen, I've got some more breaking news regarding Michael Jackson. And you have to kind of read off the sheet and look at the camera, look down, look up, look. If you look down the whole time, it's just rude. You have to address the fact that people are watching you. So, yeah. So, and you're relying on your producer who's talking to you in your earpiece. You've got a director, producer, director's assistant who's counting you down to the break as well. So you've got 3 or 4 voices in one earpiece, which is a bit weird as well as you're talking. So it's a wonderful career. It is a bit weird. It's a strange thing talking to a black hole. But it's good fun.
When I do it, I find it extremely difficult to find a balance between speaking slow, loud and clear, and speaking with emotion. Because I felt like if I sit there by myself speaking to a camera, when I try to speak loud and clear, I realize there's not a lot of emotion behind my words. Yeah. But then if I try to add in more emotion, I start speaking way too quick, and
you've got to be able to intonate, and there has to be. When I first started at Sky News, Peter Lowe was the chief editor, and he said to me, your voice can put people asleep, so make sure there's lots of highs and lows. But you learn over time. It's like anything you do. It's like playing football or facing fast bowling or, I don't know, playing chess or gardening. Whatever industry you're in, the more you do it, the better you become. So at the time, and I look back at videos of when I first started presenting, I was terrible. To me, I was terrible. It was very monosyllabic, very kind of monotone, should I say. Whereas now I can go up and down through the emotions, and it's you are right. When you first do it, it's like you sound like this and I sound like a robot, and but in sport was good for me actually, because it's like, hey everybody, welcome to the show. It's great to have you along. Great, stuff coming up on the show. I got great guests in the studio as well. Steve McMahon, Paul Parker. Hey guys, how you doing? Yeah, great. Okay, let's go to this. Let's look at these highlights now, and sport, you can emote more. And that's why I used to like reporting as well, because you go outside, you can gesticulate, you can use your hands, you can emote, you can bring people in, you can point to. That's why radio is a great way, because radio, you have to describe what is going on around you. So, they throw to the radio reporter that, yeah, I'm here in Lebanon, and behind me there's a bunch of people doing this, and over to my right, let me just describe the scene for you. Media's fantastic, as you can tell. I enjoy it.
Do you think that helped your coaching in the way of how you can express yourself and get across what you want to get across?
Absolutely. And part of the business was me using my communication skills as a presenter or an anchor reporter. Yeah, getting that message across to the people or the kids or the adults or the teenagers that I am coaching. So I'm not afraid to make a dick of myself. I'm not afraid to throw my voice and you're exactly right. It is that. Throwing your voice and communicating like that or screaming across a field doesn't come naturally to some. To me, I don't give a shit. If I make an ass of myself, I'll just laugh my way out of it, like I was when I was on air. I made mistakes, but I'd kind of smile and hopefully get away with it.
And now for the final bit, wanted to talk a bit about the change of sports media, and sports media has kind of changed massively over the last few years, because in the past you'd have your sports broadcasting channels which people would watch, and I'm talking about like the stuff aside from live coverage, so like fun interviews, analysis, behind the scenes stuff,
Sky Sports News and stuff.
And that used to all be done by official sports broadcasters, but now with YouTube, you've got this whole bunch of enormous amount of individual content creators that kind of made a brand of themselves. And what we see in sports, or with sports broadcasting channels, is that they employ these individual content creators a lot more than actual
Yeah.
good journalists.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Is that because they realize that, well, we're entering kind of this new.
Yeah, I think the viewing tradition has changed as well. So I'll tell you something now. For me to watch a show before a big game, or the guests have got to be pretty bloody good, or have to have been Olympic gold medalists, or have to have played in a Champions League final, or for me to listen to them. So viewing has changed. I think we have less time now to sit and watch. I think life is just, with the onset of social media, and it's just everything is, we want things immediately we want it now. Twitter or X was great. I would, when I was in broadcasting, I'd always go onto Twitter or X for breaking news, much quicker than, because you can find your trusted sources, who's talking bollocks or not, and you just you wean out all the shit, and you just keep a few accounts going who you trust, much quicker than BBC or Sky News, stuff like that. So I think viewing has changed. There is still space for the traditional broadcaster, but for me, I think the guests have to have real chops, as in, it has to be an ex-US president, or it has to be a Champions League winner, or a Ballon d'Or winner, or an Olympic gold medalist, or something like that, for me to listen to. Again, I think we have evolved as a human race. We want stuff now. We're not willing to wait for it. And social media, like you say, everything from X to TikTok to Snapchat to less so Facebook. I mean, my kids only watch YouTube. They only watch YouTube. Really. So
You know, I used to be the same when I was young.
so they don't even watch. I mean, they might watch Modern Family or Friends on Netflix. We'll go to Shore Lido to see a movie. So many things have changed. Mind you, if I was back in the UK, I'd still watch Sky Sports News, because for you as well, sport is ingrained in my DNA. I love it, and I'm one of those viewers who would have stuff on in the background, even if I wasn't watching. I'd probably look at the ticker going across the bottom of the screen, and just get my breaking news feed from there. But yeah, I mean, God knows where we're going to be in 10 years, right? I mean, things have moved so quickly. And having been a traditional broadcaster and now not in it, it's only been 2 years since I haven't done it. But things have changed a huge amount. And I look at myself going, God, would I ever be able to? The only thing I could really do would be hard news, because of the way I sound and the way I look. I mean, I'm not going to become some trendy broadcaster on TikTok, right? Although the social media stuff we put up on the Three Cricket Instagram accounts is it gets some real reach. There's one video that had reached 25,000 accounts, and yeah, it's incredible. So yeah, I mean, things have changed so much. Where do we start? But I think the human race has evolved into just wanting everything now, and I think that's why many people on social media are doing well. And one good thing is that they're having had no presenting training, purely by reps and doing loads and loads and loads and loads of it, they're becoming really good presenters. They're becoming really good in front of the camera, and they can riff, they can ad lib for minutes and minutes and minutes. So which is, it's kind of learning it through osmosis rather than going through the traditional journalism degree and then going into radio and then maybe getting a gig at a TV broadcaster.
And I think Brett Coleman, he's a YouTuber on sports media. I think he summed it up quite well. He said it's not about what you make, it's about how you make people feel while they watch what you make. So that, as you said, you would only tune in if there's an ex-Olympian or Olympic gold medalist in the broadcast, and they can give you value and information, and instead of someone just waffling whatever they want to talk about.
Well, no, I remember here, broadcasting out of Asia, we wouldn't have many guests who've been there and done it, right? We had great, they knew the game of football. When I was presenting Serie A, Italian football, wonderful guests. But as a viewer, they've never played in the Italian league. They've never played for a major Premier League club or a major European club. So I'm like, how do we qualify who we're putting on air? I'm a presenter. I know the game, but I don't need to have played it. My job is to get you, the guest, to give us the information that we want. And it's much better if it comes from you, the guest, who has done it and been there and played at Bologna or played at Lazio, whatever it is, who's played in a Rome derby. You know what I mean? It's like, that's like gold, because what you've experienced, like what I've experienced with cricket, that's an incredible thing. It's a big part of your life. So I always battled with that. I remember interviewing Michael Phelps once. 28 Olympic medals, 23 gold medals. It was in front of a live audience at Marina Bay Sands. It was for DBS private bankers. My God, the place was packed. There must have been about 2,000 people in there. Because that guy, it was an incredible interview, because he's obviously had a lot of, mental issues, and he was quite happy to talk about, what he's been through, and from a mental aspect as well. So, he was on Ritalin as a kid, ADHD, and just incredible story. But, swimming was his savior. But the place was packed and the people were listening. It was because that guy is, pardon the pun, is gold.
But I feel like that has changed, especially over the last couple of years, even more so. Because we're going back to the example of football, especially also with Sky Sports in the UK, there's a lot more, let's say, shows where fans come in and voice their opinion instead of actual
fan zone, right?
Yeah, and I feel like it's gained a lot of popularity quite quickly. It's not something I enjoy, because I guess I'm quite similar to what you feel like. I need to have someone that actually knows what they're talking about. But that as you said, that fan zone stuff, or there's this thing called Saturday Social where they bring in kind of known fans who people know from YouTube.
Oh, right. So celebrity who might be a fan of. All right. Okay.
No, I can't. I wouldn't say celebrity, but it's
content creator.
Chris MD, Chunks.
I haven't got a clue who you're talking about.
But people like that who they've made kind of a brand of themselves on YouTube, and then Sky brings them on for kind of a show.
That's smart from Sky, because they've got a massive following. These guys are followed by millions of people, right? So, viewing has changed, right? Again, I don't know. I can't put my finger on, the audience that you're trying to attract. But I also think that COVID helped. I remember at Sky News, where I worked for 5 years, Sky News were then happy to take, during the whole COVID thing, there's people on Skype, the quality of the feed was terrible, but just get them on air. Whereas when I was at Sky News, it'd be like, no, we can't take that because the background is wrong, or the quality of the line is pixelated or whatever, so we can't have that person. They didn't give a shit. They're like, just get them on air and let's listen to what they have to say. So I think the want from viewers for perfection is far less than it was. It's more about just get them on air, and just content filling airtime as well, in a way.
And I guess it's because, as we talked about, YouTube is big now, TikTok, Instagram. It's about as well finding clips which you can publish, because nowadays people just scroll, TikTok, and then if you've got something that has made a good kind of 30-second clip of, I don't know, it doesn't even have to be something serious, people will enjoy it. And that also got me thinking, you've been out of the sports broadcasting scene for 2 years.
Yeah.
How much of, let's say, if we, again, take football, for example, you've got Sky Sports Premier League, you've got the live coverage, like Super Sunday, for example. You've got Gary Neville, Roy Keane, Jamie Carragher, all speaking about the game afterwards, giving their opinions. How much of the opinions that they give are actually their opinions?
Oh, you mean that?
Or are they just trying to make up something because they know it will get views?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Well, I know they do that here on radio. I know because when the ratings come around, I know the DJs are basically told to say controversial stuff just to even if it pisses people off, it gets people talking, right? And it gets people calling in, and I don't think I'm not sure Carragher and Neville and Graham Souness and guys like that would say stuff just to. That's a good question actually, because for me, I was always into the whole impartiality thing. As a broadcaster and a journalist, you step over the line if you are not impartial. So if it would be interesting if a broadcaster said to me, Jason, we need you to say this, I'd be like, you can't tell me what to say, kind of thing. It would step on my kind of ethics. But I know what you're saying. Knowing professional sports people, I'm not sure they would go for that. I think they'd tell them to piss off and say, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. It'll be forthright. And that's why, Carragher less so, but Gary Neville, Graham Souness, Roy Keane, they're very forthright. He'll say stuff. He doesn't give a shit whether it pisses people off or not. Yeah. So, I think, yeah, I'm not sure they would. I know what you're saying, but I don't know about that. I don't know if they would just say stuff just to get clickbait, if you see what I mean. I always battled with that because I was like, why haven't I got more followers on X? Or why haven't I got more followers? I don't understand Instagram because I've only got 1,500 followers and I've had those for years and I still got them. At least they're faithful. But I could never understand what you had to do to, get more and more and more. And I knew there was that aspect of just saying shit. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, I'll end with two final questions, more fun questions. Who was the most famous athlete you ever had a conversation with as a sports broadcaster?
Phelps, Federer, Roger Federer, who was a gentleman. Federer, just an absolute, I got a massive man crush on him. Just a really nice guy, and just such a legend of a sport and legend of an athlete, because that guy used to move like a cat. I mean, he was a beautiful athlete to watch, aside of his success, and he's a nice guy. Phelps, from a kind of Olympic medal standpoint. Just trying to think who else. Yeah, probably Federer, Djokovic, because I covered Grand Slam tennis for many, many years. Yeah, that's probably it. Djokovic, Federer, Phelps. A couple of football players, but no, that's it. Steven Gerrard, maybe? Yeah, I don't know. That's probably it, as far as an athletic standpoint. Yeah, I've interviewed some big politicians as well, but yeah, athletes would be probably Phelps, Federer, Djokovic, Serena Williams, Venus, Serena. Never liked me interviewing them. I don't know why. Really, it's like Serena just used to roll her eyes. It's like, oh my God, okay.
And your favorite one?
Probably Federer. I remember Federer was so good because he came in. We were at Roland Garros at the French Open, and he came into our studio, and it was about 3 in the afternoon in Paris, so it would have been 9 p.m. here, maybe 10 p.m., so peak time viewing. And he came in and he checked. There were 3 cameras, 2 plasma screens, so it's 2 TVs, so he could see himself in the plasma screen. And he had this massive Rolex on, and he rolled up his sleeve and he basically put his hand on his chin, and this massive Rolex was right in the view. And obviously there's a huge audience for Rolex in Southeast Asia. There's a lot of money in these parts. So he probably sold, 10,000 units of that particular Rolex in that 30 seconds where he had his hand on his chin and he was looking at me, listening, going, just checking himself in the plasma. I remember that. Yeah. Yeah, that was cool. My favorite, Federer. Phelps was amazing because he gave a lot more. He talked about his not private life, but the battles he's had with with ADD and ADHD, and he was very honest. And then I had a great tour to Australia where I covered the Australia-India Test Series, and I was in a studio for 10 weeks with Ravi Shastri, Saurav Ganguly, Wasim Akram, Tom Moody, Ian Chappell, greats of the game. So I've been very lucky, very lucky.
Right, that would be it.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you for coming on.
No, thank you. It was fun, and I think that's what an hour. Oh my God, an hour and a half. That's gone quickly, but good luck with your coaching and your degree, and when you're a super Premier League coach, don't forget the little guys like me.